Hello, my love. I am back. I have figured it out. Thank you for being here, and thank you for watching, whether you're watching live or whether you're watching the playback. I appreciate you being here. If you haven't already, please go and look through my previous videos, and if you find anything, or if something or multiple things resonate with you here on the channel, I'd appreciate a like, a comment, and a subscribe. All of that is always wonderful. Today, I'm going to be talking about my confessions as an ex-hyper-independent single parent. So just a little background about myself. I grew up in a single parent household. My mom was extremely hyper-independent. She did absolutely everything. And when I entered a relationship with my son's father, I really didn't know what kind of impact that was going to have on my relationship and my capacity to parent. One of the things that I really wasn't expecting is to, turn into my mom, which I think a lot of us do in a lot of different ways, but we're just not sure how that's going to look, So, I ended this relationship, and pretty shortly after we started dating, I got pregnant. So there was never really, not never, but we didn't really have like this fall in love stage. It just didn't happen. Shortly after we got together, 9 months later, we're parents. And we didn't have any kind of discussions on what parenting was going to look like. My ex grew up in a household with both of his parents. I grew up in a single parent household. We never talked about potential differences that we might have when it came to discipline or communication or anything like that. We just went in. From the beginning of my child's life, me, my mom, and his mom were very, very active. Taking care of him whenever we needed to. I went back to work very early after my son was born, and my mom was pretty much taking care of him full time, and then his mom would pretty much care for him on the weekends. And of course, I was doing everything in between. And it never really dawned on me to have a conversation with him about, roles and responsibilities, or mainly just responsibilities. It was both of our first times being a parent, so it's understandable that we were going to struggle and have questions and stuff like that. But I believe one of the reasons why I had higher expectations from him is because he grew up he grew up with both of his parents, So I'm thinking, okay, well, he's seen a dynamic between two people raising children, especially because he's the oldest. That was not the case. So it's interesting to call myself a single parent when I lived with my son's dad for, the entirety of his life. That sounds weird. We were in a relationship until we broke up, but we, lived together. But throughout our entire relationship, when it came to our relationship and when it came to our son, I did everything. It was like I was everyone's mom. So not only was I making doctor's appointments for my son, but I was making sure that, he made his doctor's appointments. Not only was I working full time, and for most of our relationship, we were working the same job. We were working 50 plus hours a week, at different places, but we were working for the same company. The difference was I would get off work, and then I'd go pick up our son, and then I'd go home, and then I'd get him ready for bed, then I'd get myself ready for bed, then I'd go to sleep, then I'd wake up in the morning, and then I'd get my son ready, and then I'd drive to my mom's house, drop my son off, and then go to work. Whereas his day consisted of, he only had to worry about himself. In addition to, all of the things that I did for myself and my son, I was taking care of the household. I was making sure the dishes were clean. I was making sure the laundry was done. I was making sure, everything. The house wasn't in complete shambles. I was doing all of that stuff. And again, at one point in our relationship, I broke up with him and told him basically, I'm really tired of you not pulling your weight, because there's this perception that your partner is helping you with the housework, and the reality is you both live there. So there just needs to be a mutual understanding that both people need to do things, regardless of if one person is working and the other person is staying at home, which was not the case for any of our relationship. So it was very difficult because I didn't have any framework on how to handle the situation. I didn't have anything to refer back to because, again, I grew up in a single parent household. I couldn't speak to his parents about it. His dad and I never really had a great relationship. He's just that kind of person. And his mom, her advice to me was to pray about it. And I thought, okay, great. What else? Because my perception is I'm coming to you with concerns about your child who you know because you raised him and grew up with him. And if there's one person I should be able to speak to about, their child, it's their mother. And that just she wasn't receiving of that. So I had nothing to model this after. We went to therapy for about a month. Probably about 6 to 9 months before we actually ended the relationship. And it wasn't very helpful because we didn't follow through. We just didn't, have enough time with the therapist to learn skills and things like that. Said all this to say, now I'm in a relationship with my current husband, and we now have a brand new child together, and we're now raising our kids together. And it's difficult to almost let him in or let him parent because I'm so used to doing everything on my own. Not only am I used to doing everything on my own, that's what I saw growing up. So it's almost as if this makes sense, and it's funny that it's like my previous relationship supported my hyper independence because here I am taking the reins and doing everything, and here he is kind of just allowing me to never ask any questions, never never contributing in any way. You're falling asleep? There you go. So now that I'm in this relationship and now that we're continuing to learn about each other and learn what it's like to be parents of 3 children. Oh, what happened? You don't want to be like that? I'm the same way. I want to be all sideways and whatnot. Is that okay? I'm gonna fuss because I'm gonna be a fuss bucket. But now we're not only learning how to parent a newborn, but we're learning how to parent together. And that's something that neither one of us has done before. It's been so interesting remembering that I have a partner that I can actually rely on. And, when the baby is really fussy or just when the baby needs something, to remember that I have someone that I can pass the baby off to. Like, I don't have to try to console him and relax at the same time, or I don't have to be the only one who supports him or who holds him or who feeds him or whatever at every point in the day. Well, feeding him because I'm breastfeeding, but if I need a break because I'm just like mentally exhausted, I can pass the baby off to him. Or if I just if he just wants to spend some time when he gets home from work, which he often does. But feeling as though I almost can't trust him, or that I have to, practicing remembering that he is just as capable as I am, and allowing him the space and the time to show that, instead of just assuming, well, he's not doing things the way that I do it, so I need to just do it myself. Like when the baby's fussy, for example, sometimes my husband will take him and, he'll still be fussy for a while, and I'm thinking, let me just take the baby because I can console him. And I have to remember, him consoling the baby is going to look different than me consoling the baby because we're two different people. You know, he's not providing the baby with breast milk, so that's one thing. Because babies find a lot of comfort in, suckling and that sucking motion. So that's something that kind of makes him more comfortable, because I can just nurse him even if he's not actually nursing, even if he's just suckling, and that calms him down and it relaxes him. And the pacifier kind of does the same thing, but if he's willing to take it. So I've been battling with myself, with reminding myself, and working on practicing that I am no longer a single parent. I don't have to do everything on my own. And that's when it comes to the parenting of the children itself, and also everything that happens within our house too. I don't have to do everything or be the sole purpose person, or be the go-to for all the kids or all the children, or I don't have to do that. I just have to create space for my husband to do so as well, because it's deeply embedded in me to just say I'll just do it myself, or to not ask for help, and to just assume all of this responsibility and all of these things, and then wear myself out and then be frustrated because I'm worn out because I didn't share the responsibility. Oh, that's really what it is. It's practicing sharing the responsibility and not expecting the things that he does to look the same as when I do it. Whether it be literally anything, washing the dishes, talking to my son and making him dinner, or, consoling the baby, or whatever it is. It's not going to look like how I do it, and that's okay. Sometimes it might, sometimes it might not, but that's okay. And I just have to trust that the way that he does it is great, and trust that he is not only, he's more than capable of doing all of the things that I need support with. I just have to share the responsibility. And it's taken a lot of practice, and I'm still not there yet. I would say if there were 10 levels, I'm on level 2. I would say level 1 is just acknowledging the fact that I need to do this, the fact that I need to practice this. But I'm still working on actually implementing sharing the responsibility, because it's one thing to talk about it, but in that moment it's tough, especially at the end of the day when I'm tired and I'm thinking, well, if I just do it, it'll just be done. If I just whatever, it'll just be done. And I was talking to my girlfriend Sabrina, and I made a connection to when we're teaching our children how to do things, like when we're teaching our children how to tie their shoes, right? We have to teach them the steps. We have to allow them to practice. And we have to allow them to practice all the time, not just the times when it's really convenient, when we have all the time in the world, but we have to allow them the time to practice, excuse me, when we're headed out the door. And that could look like, if I know I need to leave in 30 minutes, telling him, at that point to tie his shoes so that I'm not waiting to get out the door, so he has those 30 minutes, just letting him know ahead of time, hey, we're going to be leaving, go ahead and put your shoes on, and I want you to practice tying them. So now he has 30 minutes to practice tying them, instead of 5 minutes where I'm rushing him and getting upset, and now we're going out the door. My husband hasn't had the newborn experience. He hasn't gone through bathing a newborn, or changing a diaper, no problem. But there are certain things that I kind of take over, because mentally I struggle with sharing that responsibility. That's really just, that's the meat and potatoes right there. I struggle with sharing the responsibility. And again, I have to remind myself that he's fully capable, that I trust him with everything else. So, well, I think that's what it is. I think I have to practice trusting him with more things, instead of just assuming, well, I've seen him do it one time and it didn't look like the way I did it. So I probably shouldn't ask him to do it anymore. I probably shouldn't share that responsibility with him. So I just have to practice. I just really have to practice. And, making videos like this and just talking it out to myself and being able to revisit it is really, really helpful, because I hadn't come to the conclusion that it was, a shared responsibility that I was struggling with. And that's really what it is. And if I can say that I trust him, then there really shouldn't be any struggle. But there is, because I'm human. And we like to stay in situations in which we feel safe. And I feel safe doing everything. I may not feel stress-free doing everything, but I do feel safe doing everything because I trust myself, and I know the way that I want it to be done. Of course, I know the way that I want it to be done, so I'm going to do it that way. So that makes it a lot easier. But I have to trust that regardless of the way that it looks, if I share that responsibility, it's going to get done. And it's going to be done well, These are things that I am continuously practicing and continuously making myself aware of, and seeing different instances of it throughout the day. And, I have to remember, I can't be upset that I'm the one trying to soothe the baby and trying to eat at the same time when I didn't share that responsibility. If my husband's not eating, or I could just put the baby down. He could fuss for a couple minutes, he'll be okay, or, put him in his little swing to help him relax. I don't have to, do this, bounce him for 10-15 minutes to help him fall asleep. I don't have to do that. But it feels safe because I know that if I do this, he will fall asleep. So naturally, I go back to that. But I don't have to. I don't have to pile more things onto my plate. I don't have to make things more difficult or more strenuous or more whatever. I can either share that responsibility or I can find an alternative. But there are choices that we make. And I'm practicing making choices that make more sense and that allow me to not feel like I'm being hindered throughout the day, and not feel like I'm doing everything because I'm not sharing the responsibility. It's really what it comes back to, sharing responsibility. And like I mentioned, being in that previous relationship for 4 years, and there was no significant period of time in which responsibility was shared throughout a relationship. I found myself being very passive-aggressive when it came to that, and just assuming that he was going to someday change, or that one day, all of my frustrated facial expressions were going to be some sort of guide for what I needed him to do in, our home and in our relationship and as a parent. And I would have conversations with him, but I struggle with conversing with adults, because not all adults, but I struggle with conversing with adults who I have created these mental expectations for, and that's totally my fault. I expected him to do these things. I expected him to know that these things needed to be done, when they needed to be done, the level of urgency or importance of these things. I expected him to know these things instead of communicating this to him, right? Because I'm thinking, well, we're around the same age. If I know that this needs to happen this way, why don't you know that this needs to happen this way? But again, age has nothing to do with maturity. It has nothing to do with really anything other than that's just the amount of time that you've been on this earth, physically been alive on this earth. It has nothing to do with, the experiences that you've had or the responsibilities that you've had. Not at all. We grew up in very different households, so our level of responsibility and understanding, and the level of responsibility and understanding that we witnessed from, our parents was also very, very different. So all those things need to be taken into consideration. And I believe that more of us just need to be more willing to over communicate instead of assuming this person should know this. Just assume that they don't, and just share whatever it is. Just over communicate and find out what that person needs to effectively share that responsibility. For me, I usually just walk around the house and see what needs to be done. But there are certain things that I have to write down. Like when I need to do homework, I'll, put it in my calendar, or, set an alarm or something like that. Some people are like that, some people are not. Some people need a physical list that they can look at every day to say, hey, these are the things around the house that we need to get done every week, And so having that conversation and communicating that to that person will help them create whatever they need to create to hold themselves accountable. And I think there should be a healthy level of holding each other accountable. As much as you want to hold that person accountable for their actions, you should encourage them to hold you accountable to your action to hold you accountable for your actions, to your actions, for your actions. Hold you accountable as well. And you have to be open to that. You can't just, feel as though you're untouchable because you're the person who previously, took care of everything or whatever. You have to remember that you are human as well. You will make mistakes, and you have to be willing to hear that person out when they're mentioning, hey, you forgot to do this, or hey, this didn't get done on time, or hey, what can we do to make sure this gets done on time, instead of just being the person constantly giving out or constantly speaking. You have to be one to listen and receive as well, and create a safe enough environment for the other person to say those things to you. Because if you're constantly saying, I wish my partner would give me feedback, I wish they would share their opinion, think about the last time they did. How did you respond? Did you respond in a way that was neutral? Did you listen to them attentively? Did you address their concerns and let them know that you will take whatever action needs to be taken so it doesn't happen again? That's the biggest thing. It's not so much about not making mistakes. It's about receiving that person's information the way that you would want them to receive information from you. Because if you're upset, if you are rolling your eyes, if you're not present, then chances are they're not going to want to do that again. And now you have this situation in which you're saying, I wish my partner would communicate with me more often, or share their concerns or whatever, and they never do it, and blah, blah, blah. Think about, so if that's something that you'd like to change the narrative of, invite them to do so, and then practice receiving their response as well. Because that creates that back and forth of communication, that back and forth of trust and of shared responsibility. It's a lot easier to share responsibility when you're not the only person delegating, right? It's very true. And again, maybe it's visual lists, maybe it's reminders or alarms or whatever, but you can speak to your partner and find out what they need. And then think about what you need as well, because it could be the same, it could be different. Who knows? Anywho, beloved, this has been a great conversation, and I have some ideas of some things that I want to practice in my own relationship moving forward. So yeah, once again, whether you're watching this live, which I don't think anybody is, that's okay, or watching the replay, I appreciate if you share your thoughts, whether you agree or disagree. Please share in the comments. I appreciate if you could like this video and subscribe if you like the content and if you enjoy the things that I'm discussing. I'm going to practice perhaps doing these lives on Tuesdays and Thursdays instead of recording a video. Essentially it's the same thing, but it gives me the opportunity to have conversations with other people that pop in and share their opinion live, which I think creates a more enriching conversation. Enriched? Something like that. So, yeah, that's all for today. I hope you have a beautiful Tuesday. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your week. And my plan is to be back on Thursday. That's my plan. Don't quote me. But I hope you have a beautiful day. And I hope to hear from you. If you're watching, please leave a comment.